Awesome.
No.
Hello and welcome to the Sprint 50 review. This sprint we were focused on a lot of the blockers for the OIWA release. Next slide, please. All right, so the lineup today is I'll go over the sprint stats. Carol will give us an update on the community. Dan will give us an update on the classic UI, or is it Harpreet?
Harpreet.
Yep. And Chris K will give us an update on the service UI. Greg B on the providers, Gregg M on Automate, Greg T on the platform, Alberto on the REST API, Rich on storage, and Dave Johnson on QE. Next slide, please. All right, so this sprint was a little lower than the other sprints in terms of total pull requests. We had 311 in the main repo. As you can see, more than half were bugs. Only 33 were enhancements, so it was really focused on stabilizing OIWA. And I believe that we are on track to release it next week. Please. Next slide, please, Marianne. Thank you. In terms of breakdown there, we have 168, so again, more than half coming from the UI, 44 coming from the providers, 23 coming from core, it seems, 28 in automate, so really kind of a good showing across the board. In the providers, the breakdown was 10 were in containers and 9 were in Rev, and 6 were in that burgundy color thing, which is popular.
Popular?
Yes. And then 5 is what? OpenStack. Yep. And then the rest were 3 and less. So that kind of just shows the those teams, which are parallel teams to us, kind of just really working away at their providers. Next slide, please. Sprint over sprint. As I said, sprint 50 kind of was lower than the last few sprints. I guess it correlates to sprint 42 there. And we'll keep tracking this to see what it's going to look like going forward. But as you can see, the blue is really tiny as a percentage here, which is the enhancements. Next slide, please. Woo. A little bit of an eye chart even from here. So 470 pull requests across the various repos that we're tracking. And we're also in the process of breaking out more repos over the coming days and weeks here. So that number will only increase. So 311 in the main repo, 47 in QE's integration test repo, 29 in the service UI, 20 in the new gems pending repo, which I think was just ripped out this past sprint, 12 on the website, and then Amazon got 8, Docs got 7, and Azure got 7, and the UI components from the UX team got 6 updates as well. So it's a big project, lots of repos, lots of people making contributions in all different areas. So really, thank you all around. Next slide, please. All right, over to Carol for the community side.
All right, thanks, Oleg. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. So since the last week, we've had actually a couple of local meetups. First one was in Netherlands. Like I think NLog is an open systems, open standards user group, and they had a meetup in Utrecht. And Mike Hausman from Proxy Services gave a talk on ManageIQ, and from the link you can his recording of his presentation, so you can access it from the Twitter too. I think I retweeted it from the ManageIQ account as well. So, and then last week there was in Madrid, Google developer group DevFest, and Sergio had presented how to collaborate in ManageIQ. I don't know if he has his slides in or recording in public yet, but I'll share that when it's available. For the upcoming event, DevConf and Boston, I think most of the CFPs have closed now. So as far as I'm aware of, there's 5 proposals, ManageIQ related proposals submitted for each of those events. And I think at least for DevConf, they are starting to inform the speakers about the accepted proposals. I've heard from one person already that his speech is accepted in DevConf. So if for those of you who have submitted and you know your acceptance, please let me know as that happens. So I hope most of these get accepted and we have a good presence for ManageIQ at these events. All right. So the F release. Last time we were having the voting for the name going on, and about half the votes went to Ruben Fine. So let the puns begin. We'll have a very fine release coming up. One I think a good thing that we are seeing is like more people participating, and we have 98 total votes this time compared to the e-release naming, which we had 53 votes. So our community is definitely growing in terms of size and also activities. So. Also for the DM e-releases, there's still work ongoing. Of course, Darga 5 was released just earlier this week, and AOL RC2 release candidate 2 was released a couple of weeks ago. So in case you missed it, these are the release announcements. And of course, not to forget, last week in ManageIQ, we have week after week really interesting and cool blog posts talking about the work that goes into the project. So check it out in the blog with the release with the tag LWIMIQ. Thanks. Next slide, please. All right. I shared some website updates last spring, and it was mentioned that it would be good to share some actual numbers of the visits. I only share percentage increase and stuff like that. So these are some of the numbers. You can see that in September to October, there's a nice increase in number of visits to the website, and the release of the website was October 10th, so to keep the context. And then in November, we still have a bit of increase, not as much as the previous one, but we are still working on a few minor updates to the website, and hopefully we'll keep this trend going. One disclaimer is that the page views for talk.ManageIQ before November are extrapolated because previously the top level numbers for both the ManageIQ website as well as talk were grouped together, and only in November I found a way to separate them into to have distinct numbers for each. So, but still, it gives a good idea about the growth of the visits to the website. I took a look at December. So this past week, first week of December, we actually had double the number of visitors compared to the previous week. At first, I was really surprised. I wonder what's going on, and it turns out that there's actually some kind of Google Analytics spam, and our website actually got hit by that. So I need to actually do some cleanup for the stats, and then maybe I'll show more information next time. But, that's it for this sprint. So next slide, please, and thank you.
Hi all. So I have some statistics here on how many UIPRs were merged during the sprint under each category. As you all know, this was a bug fixing sprint. So we had a lot of bugs fixed. I have some major ones listed out here. So we had several issues fixed around new pattern flight timelines, as well as the rendering of timelines on IE was fixed. There were some bugs fixed that were introduced with the VM tree changes in prior sprints. And also there was some fixes around the console buttons and few ITNN updates, and some of the blocker bugs were also backported back to e-release. Next slide, please. So I have listed some of the tech debt and refactoring items that were worked on during the sprint. Some of these are ongoing projects. The first one was several of the controllers were updated to use generic mixins, such as generic session mixin or generic list mixin, etc. This is an ongoing work, so we can remove duplicate code in controllers and use mixins wherever we can in the controllers. Next one was to remove get vmdb config method calls, and that was replaced by directly calling the settings class throughout the controllers and helpers. There was also in the reports explorer, menu roles editor tree was updated to use tree builder class, and few of the toolbars were refactored in Pixie, Ansible, and Foreman explorers. Also, the start page URL related code was cleaned up and moved into mixins so that it can be included from multiple places. Next slide, please. For the enhancements, I have some screenshots on the next few slides for some of the major enhancements that we did during the sprint. I'm going to skip reading through the list here and just mention the last item here, that was to replace all the checkboxes on the custom logos screen with the bootstrap switch. Next slide, please. This work was done by Aparna Karve in the services UI. So the power operation buttons were added to services detail view in services UI. As you can see in the screenshot, the buttons were moved on the top right corner and rearranged. So there's rearranged in the kebab menu to avoid having too many buttons on the screen. And also the power state field was added on the screen to show current power status. As you can see, this VM's power state is off. So stop button is unavailable in the toolbar, and start button and other power buttons are available to perform the task. Next slide, please. Support to launch a URL that's being returned from an automate method was added. So when creating a custom button, you can check the open URL checkbox and attach a method to that with a URL. So when you go to click a custom button in the UI, it should open a new browser window with a URL provided by automate method. Next slide, please. There was ad hoc metrics for container providers added by Hawkular team. A new button under monitoring was added to be able to view ad hoc metrics data. It has some cool features. User can filter data by tags, and the list of the items after applying the tags can be expanded to view more details in the place, as you can see in the screenshot. And users can also select items from the list view and view their respective graphs, as you can see on the screenshot in the right corner. It's pretty cool stuff. That's all I have from the UI side. Next slide, please. Over to Chris K.
Thank you. Major bug fixes this release. We've focused a lot of that on stability. Continuing our push for refactoring, we've moved a lot of the Angular directives to components, which will allow us to share more easily between the UIs as they come up, and also makes it a lot easier for us to move to Angular 2 when we get there. We've increased our test coverage to about 59%, and the code quality has gone up to 4.0. We've got spent a lot of this release working on designs for the F release. Next slide. As we start kind of rolling out new features, one of the big ones is now in the service UI, you can view information about the VMs, which has been a pretty big request. Next slide, please. And we've added support for pagination on all of the screens, which is significantly faster page loads. And that's it from the service UI. Next slide.
All right, from the provider side, we're going to see some updates from containers, Hawkular, OpenStack, VMware, Red Hat Virtualization, Lenovo, Azure, and some general provider updates. Next slide. On the container side, they added a custom attributes table for container nodes in the UI, in addition to what Harpreet already talked about with the ad hoc metrics, which looks really cool. Next slide. So Hawkular, OpenStack, and VMware were mostly just killing bugs. I like the fact that that Hawk there, he's pretty intent on that bug. I think he's going to eat well tonight. He's pretty excited. Next slide. Some other updates. These are still also mainly bug fixes, but I wanted to call out a few of these. For Red Hat Virtualization, they fixed Piotr worked on the targeted refresh for VM delete. In the past, when you would delete a VM, when they delete a VM from the provider, you could see it would switch between orphaned and archived, depending on whether it knew the state of the attached storage. And so he fixed knowing what the actual state of the attached storage was. It was a little complicated. He had to dig in pretty deep to find that one. On the Lenovo side, they're continuing with updates to the inventory collection. And on Azure, Rona fixed a bug where making sure that dependent resources are deleted when the VM is also deleted. Next slide. All right, so some general updates on providers. We got some beginnings of some inventory refresh strategies, including like a DTO refresh. We'll have some more explanations of what that means coming, I think, in future sprints. I'll probably task Marcel and Ladislav to give us some updates on what those look like when we get some more traction on them. We added a data warehouse management from the containers and middleware teams. This is an idea of being able to treat a metrics collection system as a manager. It's a new concept, and I think we'll see some interesting ways in which we can share those metrics across different providers. And then from the OpenStack team, they added the supports feature mix-in for cloud subnets. So thanks a lot for Sam digging in there and adding that in. Next slide, and I think I'm done.
All right, so for Automate, and this is kind of tagging on to the end of the provider stuff, there were some changes around Ansible Tower. There's a few spots where you can specify the job template you want to run by name, and we had cases where you could have multiple Ansible Tower providers that had similar names, job templates. So you're now able to provide the provider name as well as the template name to make sure you uniquely identify those if that case arises. And then just some logging improvements. We got feedback from some debug logging to, where the gem now is logging all the transactions, so you can see what's being sent, what the response is, as well as logging errors a little bit better. We're just giving some basic information before. Now you get a little more feedback. So some nice improvements there. Next slide, please. All right, so then within the model, we changed orchestration in Ansible Tower to use catalog item initialization, which is just now common across all of the different service implementations. So that's just a consistency kind of cleanup item. We added for the notification systems, when you start a retirement for services or VMs, you now get a notification alert in the notification tray about that starting. And we've started on some refactoring of the methods. This came out of a talk that Madhu did during the summit, basically refactoring and making them more modular, easier to test. A lot of our tests today load the entire model and then run resolution to do the testing. Now with some mock services, we're able to kind of get in and do more unit testing and focus on individual methods. And it doesn't require loading the entire system, so it improves speed as well. So we've started working on that. A lot of the stuff that's done right now was under the cloud orchestration operations. I think all the methods there are done, and we're kind of continuing on and hitting the methods, hopefully eventually getting all of them converted over to the newer style. Next slide. So within the service models, the snapshot methods that were exposed, initially were only exposed for VMware, where we supported snapshot operations, create, revert, delete all. Now that Rev supports those methods, we refactored that code, made those methods come into the VM model, and then added some checks in there so that I think Rev doesn't support remove all or something, but now those methods are common and can be used from the different providers, as well as refactoring of the methods for custom attributes. External management system has supported them for a long time, but didn't have access to the methods through the service model. So that was refactored and then exposed to all the different methods, including now external management systems. And for the user model, the MIQ group was exposed. Current group was also exposed, but you couldn't see all the groups that a user was a part of, so we opened up that relationship as well. Next slide. And this is a good one. Within the engine, during import, we used to, if you're doing a full import, kind of delete everything, re-import it, and if something failed, you were left with a broken domain. So very simply, wrap that in a transaction and roll back if it fails. So hopefully that will prevent a lot of calls if issues coming in when that happens. So that ended up being a really simple solution, but really helpful. And next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about the RBAC methods that we exposed. Next slide. Yeah. So here, we've had, Automate's always kind of been an admin tool and had access to all the objects in the system, and with tenancy and everything else, we wanted to enable RBAC so that methods didn't have to invent their own form of filtering. So we added down at the bottom, you can see the different methods for enable, disable, and then checking to see what state you're running in. So now methods, this is really useful for, say, dynamic methods for dialogues. You could filter down to just the objects that a user in their current tenant processing can see. And as the second bullet point points out, it's a workspace level. So once you set it for that run of Automate, for that instantiation, that will be set. If you need to just scope it to a single method, you need to turn it on and turn it off at the end of the method. So once you set it, you can have it flow through the entire process. So that's it. Hopefully that will help a lot of, I've seen a number of people that have kind of invented their own logic and tagging to support this in their methods, and this kind of helps them get away from having to do that. And ultimately, going forward, as tenancy matures, it'll probably become the default, or ultimately when we switch to REST API, you'll be filtered by default anyway, so it's a good one to have this filtering in place now.
So basically stop using no RBAC. That's probably the word of caution.
Yeah, we didn't want to force it just yet, but yeah, ultimately it'll be turned on as the default. I think that's it. Next slide. Oh, and bug fixes, but I didn't get time to copy Correct slot.
So before we go to the next presenter, there is someone who is typing really loudly, and it's coming across on the audio. So if you could either type quietly or stop typing, that would be appreciated.
My bad.
All right.
Okay. On the platform side, as you can see from the chart, very bland chart. I don't have the slide like you have, Greg. I wish I did. Mostly bug fixes, blockers this sprint. So there's a few on the next couple of slides I'll point out. Next slide, please. So there were a couple of issues in external authentication that Alberto and Joe V addressed. Pretty serious because they were introduced with the with RHEL 7.3 when we upgraded to RHEL 7.3. Actually, a lot of the stuff wasn't working, so they squashed those pretty quickly. And there was also a significant fix for one-time password support, because actually the way it was getting used, it was the way it was flowing through the system. The one-time password was actually getting used a second time and breaking the authentication. Go figure, right? So they addressed that as well. On the chargeback side, Shimon continues to do a lot of refactoring in preparation for some upcoming features, being able to charge differently for different storage types, and also they'll be working on being able to charge for resources that don't have CNU metrics. And Libor's been continuing to work on fixing bugs that have shaken out of the new calculations. So averaging and rounding type bugs. Next slide. So on the appliance console side, I wasn't going to point this out, but actually I think there's a lot of talk around it. Nick fixed the wording and the default value around the new option, the recently new option for running an appliance as a standalone database server. There was a lot of confusion around that. I think it's much better. Probably could have even done a screenshot, but you guys could see it on the appliance. And Yuri has been moving forward with working on the technical debt with the new settings. He's replacing all the deprecated calls to the old VMDB config class with the new settings class. So he's got a couple big PRs merged in the controllers and models for that. Next slide. And on to Alberto.
Alrighty.
With the rest.
So we've had quite a few enhancements already on master, so we needed to bump up the versioning for the fine release. So sorry, Carol, couldn't let you down on the puns here. So here's a query of the API entry point. You'll see the 2.4.0-pre since it's within that release. Next slide, please. All right, so I'll talk here about the enhancements. So Tim enhanced the filtering, so we support the datetime attributes. So for now, we are supporting the less than, greater, and equal operators. And as far as the value, it's a small subset of ISO 8601. You can see the examples here. And here's an example on the bottom, creating VMs for Red Hat, and that we retire before the end of the year. So that's a good enhancement to have. Off to next slide, please. Alrighty, and another enhancement by Tim. So this was needed by the service UI, where they just needed to know a count on resources, so they really didn't need to get the resources. So we added a new parameter hide. Works similar to expand, and in this case, we're just hiding the resources out of the payload bag. And next slide, please. All right, and one enhancement by Elon, the mode when creating policies was kind of required. Otherwise, things were not really working well. So the mode is now required, and you can see here during the creation, it's checked by the API, so we're setting it here for compliance in this example. So, and that's it for the enhancements. Next slide.
Okay. This sprint we have some add-on work associated with the addition of storage managers that we did previously. Essentially, it's a UI-specific change, and we now categorize storage by its type. For example, the type of storage exported, block or volume storage, object storage, file shares, etc. Managers are also categorized by the type of storage they export, and it's even though we don't do it now, it's significant to realize that a given storage manager can export multiple types. So in the future, you may see specific storage managers categorized under more than one category. Jerry did that work along with the aid and assistance of the UI team, and he should have a demo of that now. Good.
Wait, you gotta go back and do that. All right.
Okay. Sorry, I'll just look up there.
Okay.
All right. So, Rich stole some of the things I was going to talk about here, so we'll just run through some of this. We're going to talk about the changes to the UI for the storage manager. Before we start, I just wanted to put screenshots up here of what it looked like before. The first go around, we had a single level UI menu that had the list, had the link to the storage providers and the types of storage that we exported, which are the volumes and the object stores, and we even had under the control of the setting there, we had the demo NetApp code still in there. And then when we clicked on the link for the storage providers, we got a list of all the storage managers, no matter what the type would be. So, in this example I have here, I think there was one OpenStack provider which was exporting both block and object storage, and so we saw two storage managers, both on the same screen. Nothing was differentiated by type. And now you can see the changes that were made. When we clicked on storage, we saw links at the first level of the menu, depending upon the type of the storage that's available. So currently we have block and object storage. Conceivably, we could have file shares, data, any other types of data, and storage that we might add later on. So selecting one of the items there, come on, move, there we go. When you click on block storage, you'll now see managers specific to the block storage and a second level menu list and the types of objects that are available for block storage, in this case volumes, volume snapshots, and the backups for volumes. And if you select object storage, you'll see similarly links to the managers for object storage, and then the object types, no pun intended, object store containers and object store objects that are available there. So we'll go here and we'll select the managers, and we will see a list of storage managers here. Now here I believe I have 3 OpenStack providers configured, and we now see that there are 3 object store managers, that these are all Swift in this case, that are visible to us, and they're differentiated by type. And if we went back and looked at the block storage managers, we would only see the Cinder managers that have been added due to the fact that they've been differentiated by the type that we are supporting for the block. Now, I think I'm also showing that, in the UI, we can see specific information about the type of manager that's here. So it'll say block storage manager here in all places where we previously would just say storage manager, and under object, the same thing. And the one change that made a lot of this possible, and that's really the end of the demo, the one change that made a lot of this possible is we added something to the controller to, how do we stop? There we go. We made change the controllers to allow us to specify features that these managers support and allow the UI to display things based on the feature that we specify in the control. That can be used in other controllers for other types of objects also. That's it.
Thanks, Sherry. That's it for this. Next slide, please.
Okay, QE. So a lot of bug fixes, a lot of testing, a lot of bug verification. This sprint, we saw a 10% reduction in the total number of open issues. So that's good. Move in the right direction. That equated to 20% reduction of high impacting issues. So really pleased with the direction that the overall quality is headed. Bug triage effort identified the next top issues that we want to chase for the next maintenance release. So hopefully that'll make things easier to understand where we want to spend the resources moving forward. We have prototyped a new defect weighting metric to help kind of distinguish if there's 50 high severity issues, which one should I start on, right? So it'll be a magic number that we're going to begin to follow to kind of identify what's the most important one in that list. Overall stability of the release is looking much better. Next slide. You can't even see it, so that's a fail. Yeah, barely can see the line, but the incoming rate has decreased over the last 2 sprints, so that's great. There was some concern on that, so good job, thumbs up. I think that's a younger Gregg T, maybe. Gregg T before he cut his hair. Next slide. Automation. So we have been fighting some infinite spinner issues within the UI. This has been traced back to some of the JavaScript tree refactoring that has, I think, happened for the last several sprints. We finally identified kind of what were some of those problems. There's some pull requests that have been merged on both sides. So there's still some more to chase down, but it should be easier moving forward. For the most part, automation was deprioritized this sprint, so only some 40 PRs were merged. We should be picking that back up next sprint. Next slide.
Okay, and that's the overview of the sprint. This next sprint will be extended by 1 week because of the Christmas New Year holidays, and so the next sprint review will happen on January 4th, the first week in January, and that's it. I just want to say thank you to everyone on this sprint and on all the sprints that we did this year, and looking forward to seeing everybody in 2017. Thanks, guys.